Everybody, good evening. I see that there are a number of people still logging on, so we're going to give it another 30 seconds and then we'll get started. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening. My name is Rob Banzer. I'm the superintendent of the Northport-East Northport School District, as many of you know, and I really want to thank you for taking the time to be out here, to be here with us virtually tonight. I do have a PowerPoint that I want to share, and I certainly know that there's been many questions, and I know I appreciate that. And the board appreciates that because it's very important, extremely important to the Board of Education and to the administration that we hear from you, the community. So just give me 1 second here and I will share the screen here. So again, the purpose of tonight is really to provide the community, to provide all of you that are with us tonight an opportunity to have a better understanding of what the future study is, how we got to this point tonight, and just to talk a little bit about next steps. So I did just want to point this out, kind of the roadmap to this, and this is taken from the newsletter from last fall of 19. So prior to last fall, during the budget season, in May of 2019, I had indicated to the board that I thought it was important that we engage in a future study, that we set money aside so that we could have a consultant come in and help us through this process. And so there were a number of steps to the process. And again, as you can see here, the consultant, Paul Seversky, he started out, came to the district a number of times in July, started to gather a lot of information for our enrollment projection and demographic study. He also completed a pupil capacity study, and I'll explain more about those things in a little bit more detail. And then in the fall of last year, we took the time and we formed a community advisory committee, again, as the last phase of this. And then from that time, basically from November until March, actually till February, the committee was able to meet monthly and really dive into a number of aspects of the district, both from a values perspective and a program perspective, as well as the data. As we all know, our world's kind of got upside down in March, and then the meetings switched to virtual. And then we had a board workshop back in September, and the committee was able to be present at that board workshop virtually and we were able to present the findings of the future study to the Board of Education. And again, all this information can be found online at the bottom of the main page. And again, I'll reiterate that in just a little bit. So again, I just want to, just dive into a little bit more, a little bit about the methodology. The first real piece of this was really diving into how we use our space. And a lot of this information was not only gathered by taking square footage and the like and the enrollment, but also having conversations with the principals. How are various classrooms used? What do you use them for? What's their purpose? What special programs exist in your buildings that we ought to know about that should be included in this future study. So all of that information was gathered, both in person from the principals and then also information that they were asked to fill out. And from that, the school building capacity study was put together. Secondly, we engaged in an enrollment study and gathered a lot of information about where we've been in terms of our enrollment and where we're going. And again, that's also posted on the website. Those two studies were then used to inform the Community Advisory Committee. But prior to that, there was another meeting with the principals and administrators to talk about the goals, talk about the vision of the district, what goes on in this district, what makes Northport-East Northport the district that it is, so that there was a really good understanding of the values and the programs that exist in this district. Again, another visit to the principals, and then the establishment of the Community Advisory Committee, which was put together. You may recall that a letter was put out last fall inviting people, and we had over 40 individuals throughout the community to be a part of that committee. And I want to thank each and every one of them for taking the time and putting in the effort to really represent the district, but also dive into the information, make some inferences, make some observations, and provide feedback throughout the process. And again, here you can see the list of people that were on the advisory committee. And again, I want to thank them for their time and effort. So, again, I alluded to this, but the advisory timeline, they met in person November through February, and then we started meeting digitally in March. There was a blog put together, and to get the analysis of the committee, there were small groups instructions in June, and then in July, the advisory committee met as a focus group and rank ordered the scenario options that were presented. And then again, all of this information can be found on the website, and the future study is there as well. So there was quite a process to get to this point, but I do want to point out that the rank ordering is not a vote. It's just an understanding and a dipstick into what the committee felt about the options as they were presented. So again, I just want to indicate that this was not used or done to drive a decision from the committee, rather just to gain a holistic consensus of their thoughts and opinions. And I just want to take some time and really, discuss this particular graphic. And I do want to point out that this, and I've tried to number the pages where these can be found in the study, but this particular graphic can be found on page 145 of the future study. So what was the priority of the study? What was the main question? And the main question is in front of you on the top there. Are there options that might provide program effective and cost effective ways or patterns to organize how the pre-K-12 program is implemented and delivered over the next 3 years? So this graphic was, evolved, and really the priority became, how do we maintain the diversity and excellence of educational programs delivered with class-size goals of the district and guided by the program vision? Options should address the role of neighborhood schools as practicable given the enrollment projections and the school district building resources available. So what's in that statement? One, people recognize the diversity and excellence of our program. People recognize that class size goals and class size guidelines are very, very important to this district. And then people also recognize, the community also recognize, the role and the value of neighborhood schools. So all of that in that statement, you find all of those values embedded, and they're embedded throughout this report. But then, as that being the central question, what's going on, in our world as we consider all these things. Obviously, the tax levy affordability, we've been working under the tax cap for almost a decade now. At the time, LIPA had not been resolved. We know now that we have a settlement. And again, that's going to, impact the district. And we spent, months discussing that and the value of the settlement. But again, that's in front of us. No more is that an unanswered question. We know the answer, and we now have, a pathway forward regarding that. The bones of the building, really, what's the capital work that is needed in each building? And that was also factored in as well. Enrollment, the projected enrollment decline. And again, we've, over the last 10 years, our decline has been well over 1,000 students, closer to 1,400. And then knowing that if you have declining enrollment, what is your excess building pupil capacity? We know that we weren't using our buildings 100%. And, anybody that has, been involved in the district over the last year and a half, that we moved a wing out of Ocean into Norwood. And, I think everybody's aware of Northport Middle School. And then we know that inflation, there are just certain cost drivers that continue to challenge school districts, not only Northport-East Northport, but school districts across, across the island, across the state, across the country. And then the idea that, a 20% reduction in state aid. So there are a lot of influencing factors as we built this and as we considered, all of the data and the scenarios that were put forth. So I do want to, I want to come back and I want to emphasize this point. Are district values embedded in this study? And the answer is yes, absolutely. And so one of the things that I know that we started out as we held our, the Community Advisory Committee meetings was the time spent in the first few meetings really focusing in on what is our program, what do we value, and really talking about those. And so at one point, the administration gave just a brief overview, a preliminary program vision. What are we doing? Where do we want to be? And really had a chance to, enlighten some of the committee members about what we're doing and, what's going on in the school district. So in all these scenarios, throughout this future study, there are some key points that I think are important for people to remember. There is no loss throughout all of this to existing program. The class size guidelines remain unchanged. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit more. And then there are opportunities, there are opportunities for program enhancements. And, there are a number of possibilities. There's certainly nothing that has been, discussed. But I know that both committee members and some of the emails that we've received have talked about, the STEM labs, the makerspace labs. That's just one possibility. As long as I've been here, there's been discussion about, the potential for a 9-period day at Northport and East Northport Middle Schools. So those are the types of things that doing this deep dive allow further discussion and possibilities. So I just want to, to emphasize that, because we're not talking about increasing class sizes. We're not talking about changing the guidelines. We're talking about really using the capacity that we have in our buildings to a more efficient level while maintaining our programs. So I just, there's a lot of numbers on this page, and I really just want to take some time and talk through it. So the blue and gold box chart that you see there, right? And again, these are our elementary class size guidelines. So in the blue are the contractual guidelines, and the yellow are the administrative guidelines that we use when we talk about staffing and how many students in each section. So what I want you to understand is, we work within this range, but I want you to know that all of the projections, all of the scenarios use the yellow column when configuring all of the scenarios. So I just wanted to point that out, that, we're using everything to the right-hand side there, the 20 at K and going all the way up to 25 at grade 5. And if you look all the way to the right, if you look to the chart to the right, you can see a little bit about some of the issues regarding efficiencies. So in the 1920 school year, we had a range of class sizes depending on what school you were in. All of them, were under the cap, but you can see that it ranged from 18.3 to 15, and that represents a 22% difference low to high. At grade 1, the equity gap, the balance between the classes was even greater. And grade 2, you can see the pattern here that there is an inequity, there is an imbalance, between between various grade levels in various buildings. And it's not just one building. Some are high for one grade and low for another, and some are in the middle. But what it does illustrate is that there is an imbalance. But all these are within our administrative guidelines. And so the chart in the bottom left just kind of summarizes it. Out of the 109 class sections, 96.3% of them were below the functional class size guidelines of the district, which is the numbers in the gold. And then 83.8% were below it by 10%. And there were a couple that had, at one point during the year, that had a student that went over, at the guidelines. So you can see that for the overwhelming majority of our classes, in the 90%, we were below the functional class guidelines, and even more so, 83, almost 84% were 10% or more. So again, this is just a way to explain a little bit of what some of the issues are and some of the imbalances or the inequities that we see, in some of our sections. And again, it's really a function of, if you only have 3 sections and you have a few more students move in, we want to adhere to these guidelines. And so in some cases, we may go ahead and add a teacher and break that section, and now you have very, very low. Well, I mean, all of these are low, but you have very, very low, maybe compared to, a neighboring elementary school. So, this is a little dense, but I do want to take some time and explain it here. On the left-hand side is the school building. And then you can see the next, and those were the enrollments of the building total. And then you see the pupil capacity in 1920, K through 12. And you can see that the operating capacity, based on all the data that was collected, say, if we take Pulaski Road, right, the operating capacity was 468 students using the functioning operating class size guidelines, right? So basically, and then if you go to the right, a review of the data and the way that some rooms are used, because some buildings have different sizes than others, and we use rooms differently. They all get used, for very good purposes. But then you can see, well, geez, if we change this room or change that room, could we add even more students? And the answer in some of those classrooms or in some of those buildings was yes. So it just so happens at Pulaski that pretty much, that 468 was its limit. And, that 382 out of 468 represents an 82.7% usage. So again, you can see the range here of how the elementary schools were used. You can see the same type of range that was used at the middle schools and then certainly at the high school. And again, this is found on page 4 of the future study. And again, you want to have some flexibility, right? You don't want to be, right up against the cap because, some people move in, some people move out. And so you want to have somewhere between 5 and 10%, potential and unassigned. So again, I'm just pointing these things out to you. I know there's a lot of information, but this was the kind of data that was collected, presented, and considered. So I do want to talk a little bit about enrollment, and this particular chart can be found in the enrollment study, and the link is at the bottom here, and this will be posted. So I do want to point out that when the scenarios were developed, when the determination of how to realize the potential capacity based on the number of students, this is what was used, right? So if you look here, you can see our enrollment going back to 2014-15, and as of October 1st of 2021. So you can see that in the yellow, you can see the highlighted numbers. That's where our enrollment currently is as of October 1st. There's probably a little bit of a bounce either way, since that date, but suffice it to say we're pretty close to that 4,805. Using the projection of the alternative hiring, so there were a number of projections used, enrollment projections used as this was developed. And again, if you look at the study, you can see there's ranges that are given from the low range enrollment all the way to the high range. And so the alternative high range was used here. And you can see that the numbers used in order to determine, staffing and classrooms and what have you, is really a number that should be at over 5,024. And I'm talking about for the district. And you can see, so there's a lot of capacity, there's a lot of extra capacity already built into the projection relative to our actual enrollment. So, it's a difference of about 220. So in this range, there's already, a 5 to 10% cushion, if you will. But when we look at the actual enrollment versus what the projected enrollment should be for 2021, right? And that's what we're looking at here. There's a difference of 220. I do want to talk a little bit about, the financial aspect of this. And I think it's really important, you may recall seeing this chart before, because there is a financial component to this. There's no doubt about it, that LIPA will be paying more. LIPA will be paying less over the next 7 years. And, it's incumbent upon the district to look for ways to reduce that burden that will be shifted to the taxpayers. And so really that and the declining enrollment are two significant drivers as to why we're doing this. So if you look, we're estimating approximately $2 million in this year will be shifted from LIPA to the taxpayers, and another additional $2.4 million next year, and then 2.7 in 22-23. And so this, these are significant numbers, and these are numbers that we need to take into account, and collectively come up with ways to mitigate these increases to the community. And there's really two ways of doing that. We have to look at cutting costs, and looking at this and efficiencies, but not forgetting about what our goals are and what our vision is for our students and our community. So in a minute, you're going to see what the scenarios are. You know that they have been, it is online. It is public, And I do want to point out that the scenario options of the future study can be found on pages 70 through 90. And for every option, you'll see a rationale. You'll see the estimated pupil capacity results of implementing the scenario. And then what are the opportunities and challenges? Because, you know, like I said, you know, there's opportunities and challenges for each and every, scenario, including doing nothing. And then if you go a little bit further, pages 97 to 101, you can see the estimated annual savings to the expenditures. So again, you know, this gives us an understanding, the framework for, you know, for each of the scenarios. And I just wanted to point out the format, you know, for those individuals that may want to take a deeper dive into the future study. So, you know, so here are the scenario options, you know, scenarios A through E. And again, you know, there are some patterns here. You can see that, that in every scenario there is, you know, discussion about mothballing or closing or, you know, no longer utilizing Dickinson. In some of the scenarios, you can see that there are options for Belrose as well. And again, you know, there's discussion whether or not what we would want to do with Belrose. In some scenarios, it could be used as a, you know, as a building, or in some other scenarios, it could be potentially used as the administration building. So, you know, this is a summary. And as I said, you can find out the details about each of these scenario options on pages 70 through 90. And again, it goes into quite a bit of detail there. I do want to point out on the far side there that, you know, what the savings are estimated to be. Again, using these very conservative numbers. And, you know, allowing for the programs to run as is. And that's not to say that you know, there's no recognition that, you know, this is a change, right? You know, I understand that, you know, that certainly is not lost on me, you know, that we would be doing something that we're different than we are right now. And I know the circumstances that we find ourselves in. I know it's been a very difficult time. But it's also important for us and important for the board to, you know, to weigh everything. You know, we have an opportunity to maintain our program, to maintain low class size, and to be more efficient and and provide cost savings to the district and to our community. So that's really what goes into, you know, that's really what went into these scenarios. And the study. I do want to point out that there are some other, you know, there are some appendices with some other options that are in there. In the later pages, I think around page 150, 148, there's a lot of commentary from, you know, from the committee members, you know, about their insights, you know, about other possibilities that do exist. And I encourage everybody to take the time and read this. And again, I just want to point out here that if you go to the website at the bottom of the main page, you know, you'll find a lot of information about the future study. You'll find the program implementation study, the pupil capacity study, the enrollment projection, and you know, the capital project report, the bones of the buildings. In other words, what work is needed in each of the buildings and how does that impact us? And again, I just wanted to point out that, you know, there was a mailer that went home, and there'll be another one that goes home very, you know, within the next week or so. It's at the print shop, and then will be sent to all homes, not just school community homes, but every home in the school district, informing people about this, you know, about this issue. And again, you know, I want to thank you for the questions. I want to thank you for people that have, you know, been providing their concerns. You know, as I said, it's important for me to know that. It's important for the board to know, what's on the minds of people. And, the first, the first piece here is about, COVID. We're hopeful that we're going to get past COVID. And we know that what we're talking about here has a lasting impact. And so we're trying to weigh this, what we consider a very temporary situation, to something that could be very long lasting. So we're, so that's why we continue to plan with a long range frame of mind. That doesn't mean that, should we find ourselves, unfortunately, in a situation next year or in a couple of years where, we perhaps needed to use those buildings for something that we can't even imagine right now, that wouldn't be an option. Because I do want to point something out that, the decision, whatever the decision is, if the decision is to close a building, the next phase of that, obviously, there's a lot of work to be done, to get to that point, but then a decision needs to be made about what to do with that building. And so typically from the time that a school district determines that a building should be closed, one option could be that it's rented out. Another option is that it's sold. Another option is that it's mothballed until a decision is made, in terms of what to do with it on a longer scale. If it was necessary to reopen that building for whatever reason, whether it's COVID or something else, if you have that asset, you still have the ability to do that. You don't lose that. So, I know we've been asked the question, geez, was this done with COVID in mind? Well, certainly as we got into March, it was on everybody's mind and everybody's consciousness. But as we planned and as we look at the scenarios, it doesn't, the specificity to COVID isn't necessarily there, but we know that should we have to close a building and then something happens and we still have it, then we could do something else with it if necessary. What's the second question really, and these are some of the more common themes that we've been asked. My child attends a school that is not closing. Will they still be impacted? The answer is it depends. And I would say, possibly yes. So if we close even one elementary school or, any school, that there would very likely be redistricting, and it could impact students across all, let's just say elementary schools or middle schools, that, you would have to really think about that, because again, you would want to come up and find balance in those in the schools. So, somebody close to a line, the line may shift, and we may find ourselves, attending different schools. So the answer is yes. It could very well impact certainly more than the students of the building that potentially is closed. And why is closing one school not a proposed scenario? And really, in all the scenarios, obviously, we see that we can close at least one and two in the scenarios that we're given. And really, it's because we can. We can do it, and we can still run our program, and we can still be efficient, and we can still maintain our class sizes by closing two. So again, and really the question was, how do we be as efficient as we can and still maintain our program? So that, that question, there was what I would consider pretty strict adherence to that question. So again, those are some of the more common themes that are coming up. I do want to point out that we will, I know, as we lead up to this meeting, I know that there were many questions sent to the Future Study email address. And again, I'll post that in just a minute. And as I said, the board wants to hear from you, and I want to hear from you, because we want the community involved, and we want to make a decision that has been all encompassing. So what are the next steps? And there is, we have a board meeting tomorrow night. And so, again, there's opportunities for you to, raise your questions and bring those questions to the board members. We have another board meeting on November 5th, and I encourage you to, to participate in those meetings. We're looking at the November 19th meeting to narrow down a scenario that's expected to be chosen, and then in December, really bring back the committee to produce an educational impact statement related to that chosen scenario. And again, I want to emphasize this again, your participation is encouraged. We know that this is an impact, and, we certainly understand that people, we've heard from people that are saying, hey, there's a lot going on, and we certainly understand that. We do. That's not lost on me, and it's not lost on the board members. We do find ourselves in some pretty challenging circumstances, again, from a declining enrollment perspective, from a financial perspective, and we feel like we need to give this very, very strong consideration. So that's the end of the presentation for that I had. I know there may be some questions, and again, I encourage you. I'm just going to repeat myself. To stay involved in this. Look for the flyer, attend the meetings. Ask questions because we know how important this is to our community. And again, I want to thank you for being here tonight. Mr. McLaughlin, I don't, I understand that. I think I see that there have been some questions that have come in.
There are a number of questions that I've had a chance to read while you were presenting. A couple of people have asked if the housing project that is they're suggesting that it's been approved for the corner of Pulaski Road and Elwood Road, was that taken into account in terms of the numbers of students that may enroll in our schools as a result?
Again, not specifically that, but yes, there is, as I said, there's extra capacity built in, and in addition to that extra capacity, we know that there's another increased capacity of over 220. So there is room, as we talked about this, there is room in the pupil capacity for the flexibility. So yes, there is anticipated flexibility built into all the scenarios.
There's a question posed: what will happen to the staff at the school that is chosen to be closed?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and actually, just something else that I want to point out. In the contract, when we negotiated with the teachers, we negotiated an early retirement incentive that will take place, that will be in effect next year. So in other words, by June 30th, we will know which teachers have decided to retire. And so for the 21-22 school year, that certainly lessens the burden on having to let teachers go, right, to excess teachers, because nobody wants to do that. And by offering this, there is that opportunity to, I don't want to say completely eliminate it, but to really minimize it. What would happen with those teachers, again, depending on the building, there is a provision in the law about, whether or not, first of all, whether or not a teacher, if we needed the teacher, then we would look at where we had openings in other buildings in their area of certification, and we would go through our process within our contractual obligation and place those teachers.
Thank you. I know you addressed some of this in your presentation, but it boils down to a kind of a more simplified answer, I think. How were the building closures selected, and why not other elementary schools? Just to reiterate that, Mr. Banzer, if you could.
Sure. So there were a number of factors that were considered. what is the cost to run the building? What is the cost to maintain the building? What is the cost for future capital projects? All of those things were taken into account as we, as we went, as the committee and the consultant went through the list. And again, all of that can be found in the rationale under each scenario on those pages 70 through 90.
A number of people have suggested that there are trends of people moving into our school district, perhaps from New York City or more congested areas due to COVID. The question is, was that taken into consideration in terms of a potential increase in student population?
Yes, it is. Again, as we talked about that flexibility within the pupil capacity, it certainly was. I do want to point out, I just came back to this enrollment piece here. You can take a look at our overall numbers, right? If you go all the way to the right, you can see that, compared to last year, we're down a little bit over 300 students. We see in the kindergarten, we see a number of 284. And again, this is a couple of days old, so we might be plus or minus a few students, but we had a similar trend to this back in 17, 18. We had, for some reason, there was just a low kindergarten enrollment. This year, it may be, I'd like to hold off for a year because perhaps some of our families decided that they wanted their, either are waiting a year or they may have sent their children, their kindergarten children to a private school and may be coming back in kindergarten. So, we look at these numbers across, as of 10/1, and I do understand there has been a lot in the news about that. I have talked to some realtors, and there has been some movement, but what they pointed out to me is that the inventory of homes is very low. I think people are seeing that houses, because inventory is low, they're going above asking price and they're going very quickly in general. That's a general statement. As the price of the house increases, that generally will slow down. But it's not necessarily because a lot of people are moving in. It's just that a lot of people are, things are happening much quicker because the inventory is so low. So generally speaking, yes, there is a movement, but I don't know that we can say that we've actually realized it yet. And if we have, I just want to point out, there is flexibility, there is room in those projections and in those enrollments for, that would allow that to happen.
This is a scenario question. A parent is asking if they have a child in Belrose and Belrose closes, can the district guarantee that all Belrose children in the same grade level will be placed together in their new school, at least for the first year? And the sentiment is that the kids have been through quite a bit, and this may be detrimental to their emotional well-being.
It would really be, how we would make that decision. I mean, that's certainly something that we could consider, but if, the geographic area of Belrose is pretty diverse and vast. And so it would really, it would have to, in all honesty, it'd have to make sense. I do understand the sentiment. I mean, if the answer is, if there's one grade level entirely going to, a new building, then the answer to that question would be yes. It really depends on the scenario, and it really depends on, geography and the alignment of those grade levels.
And in a typical year, Mr. Banzer, the teachers and the principals are involved in the creation of the classes for the following year. So would that be something that we would continue to employ, that process?
You mean in terms of scheduling and placement and all that?
Class placement.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would imagine, I just want to say, first of all, should this happen, there would be a tremendous amount of time, effort, and energy in making it a new home for people and making people feel welcomed. You know, and I can say that unequivocally, that would be the case. And so I would imagine, and I can say more than imagine, but that there would be a tremendous amount of collaboration between the principals of the school, of the host of the school that students may be leaving, and the principal to the school where they would be going. And it's very similar to what happens when students leave 5th grade and they go to the middle school. You know, there is quite a bit of conversation that goes on. Obviously, it's a little bit different because you're not being placed with one teacher. You know, you have a number of teachers in 6th grade, so it is a little bit different. But I do know that there are conversations, you know, about students and that transition phase, and that would be the same. There would be a tremendous amount of care and attention given, you know, given to welcoming students and providing a new opportunity and making it, you know, making their new home their home as quickly as possible.
This question speaks to the class size guidelines. The question is, isn't being below the functional class guideline a positive thing?
Well, I guess it depends on how you look at it. Again, you can see that there's an equity in there. Yes, but at some point there becomes a level of inefficiency, so that if you had a few more sections together of the same grade level together, and you had 2 or 3 students enter, you wouldn't necessarily have to break another section and add another teacher. And again, at some point, you know, you have to really weigh the financial aspects of that. But you can see, if you look at our administrative guidelines here on the right-hand side in the yellow column, they are very low. They are very low, and it is something that is valued by the administration, and it is valued by the Board of Education.
There's a long statement that has a question at the end, which reads, what's the likelihood that the comments and scenarios will be seriously considered by, I would assume it's at the Board of Education?
Sure. Well, I can tell you that every email, every inquiry, every concern by every board member will be given its due, and administration as well.
There is a question, does any scenario include closing the Brosnan building?
Yes, if you look at the scenarios, there are, there are options that kind of deter or discuss or look at whether or not we should close this building and perhaps move the administration into Belrose. And so we would have to do a deeper dive into that. What are the benefits of that? Is there some entity out there that may have an interest in this building, and I'm in Brosnan, that's why I say this building. The Brosnan building over Belrose, that would certainly be something that would be considered. What would be the cost of moving? All those things would be factored in. But you can see in the scenarios that yes, it is a possibility.
There are a number of questions that inquire about Northport Middle School. It appears that Northport Middle School was not listed in any of the scenarios as a building that would potentially be closed. And there are a variety of questions about the condition of Northport Middle School and suggestions that might be a building that the community would be interested in closing rather than some of the other buildings. And I just wonder if you could comment on that.
Yeah, sure. Again, I think most people realize and understand that there was an extensive testing that went on. We had, a multiple 1,000-page report from PW Grosser. We went through every single scenario, every they tested everything, and again, they gave the building a clean bill of health. We have students in there now, and things are going very well.
This question is about Dickinson Avenue.
If I can, I just want to point out, though, again, in the future study, if you go to Appendix A, just going back to last year, there was, there was an inquiry into looking at what that scenario could look like. And again, that was independent of the committee. So that's why you won't see it as a scenario. But there is information in there about, in Appendix A in the future study about Northport Middle School.
I'm not sure if we can answer this question or if it's in the report, Mr. Banzer, you would know. Where we stand today, how many empty classrooms are there in the 6 elementary schools combined?
Well, none, not classrooms, because again, we added, I think 12 or 14 sections. So we really lowered class size even way below these administrative guidelines. And that has to do with COVID. Obviously we find ourselves in a very, very unique set of circumstances. And we utilized, the capacity that we have. And as I mentioned, when we opened up, we consider this to be a temporary situation. And again, we have a way to mitigate it now. And should we find ourselves in a situation in the future, again, something we never even would have thought about a year ago, then we have that capacity. But right now, they're all being used.
There's a question regarding the number of transitions that students would have to make in their K through 12 experience, and a suggestion that 4 changes between schools as they move up in grade level might be too many. Can you speak to the transitions that students will make in their K-12 experience?
Sure. Yep. Certainly, there are many different models, that are out there. Currently we have, 3 transitions. You go from elementary to middle to high. Some of these have, 4 or 5. And again, it's really, there are positives and negatives. There are benefits for, for students to come together earlier and get to know their class earlier. So again, it's really, a lot of it has to do with, the approach. It has to do with the climate and the culture and the leadership. That's built in whatever situation and whatever configuration you find yourself.
Can you share with the group the number of people who joined the webinar tonight? Hoping this individual is hoping that people are coming directly to the source for information.
Sure. If you give me 1 second. There are currently, right now, there are 272 participants.
Great. Do you have, I know you mentioned earlier that if certain schools closed, the district lines would be redrawn. This is a very specific question about the district lines. What would they look like if Belrose and Dickinson both closed? Do you have that answer at this time?
I do not. I do not have that answer. Again, I think it would depend on what scenario was chosen.
This question reads, why are we not looking at increasing class size rather than closing more than one school?
Well, again, we could potentially, within those guidelines, increase here and there and to, eliminate the efficiency. But if we increase class sizes, then there would be more space.
Right. When calculating unused space at various sites in the district, was that inclusive of the portable classrooms?
In each of the scenarios, you'll find that there's an opportunity to remove the portables. Again, they have a lifespan, and we've had them for quite a while. So none of these situations include keeping or utilizing the portable classrooms.
This question, I think you've addressed this, but it bears repeating. What programs would be cut or diminished if only one building or no buildings were to be closed at this time? And then maybe to expand on that, I know you mentioned that if more than one building was to be closed, what would happen to programs?
Sure. So the question is, I think, we value our programs here. And so, but we also know that we are going to be financially challenged. That's not conceptual anymore. That's real. We know that that's coming. The settlement has been finalized or almost finalized, but we know that it's a done deal. So we know that shift is coming. We know that this is a very difficult time for people individually. We know we're being challenged with potentially a 20% reduction in our state aid. So the finances have to come from somewhere. That's just a reality. And so, do we look to be more efficient and maintain our program and very likely be able to talk about some enhancements to our program that we have talked about for a long time? One of the things that happens now, and again, I talk to, the union about it constantly, is, the number of teachers that are shared, among buildings. And it's a real challenge. And, that's the type of thing that can keep happening, because as enrollment keeps declining in a particular building, you don't need them as much there, and then you need them somewhere else. And now they're going to 2 or 3 buildings. And yes, I mean, it's important that, that they have their job and they're able to maintain it, but it does become a challenge. And then there's inefficiencies that are built into that as well. So there is a lot to consider.
Mr. Banzer, can you speak to how the enrollment has changed post-COVID?
Yep. I mean, again, is it a result of COVID? I don't know yet. But you can see that, that we're down over 330 students. Why is that? Typically we've been down about 140, in a given year, roughly. That's an average. But this year it's almost, it is double that. And as I said before, we see about a 50 student decline in kindergarten. Is that a result of COVID? Is that just a result of the number of 5-year-olds in our district? But it's really hard to determine the impact that COVID has had on this. But we do know that we're down, and I'm sure that COVID has had some influence on this. I just can't say exactly what it is.
Right. A question about Belrose Avenue School. If Belrose Avenue were to remain open, would it only be for grade 6, or might it still be grades K through 5?
Well, again, based on the scenarios, you can see that we'd be talking about a grade 6 configuration at this time. But again, that's why we're going through this process. But you can see what the scenarios indicate for it.
This next question is really about LIPA, but very related to what we're talking about. And there are some details in it, but it basically asks, will the deficit level out at some time? It does seem like there's a decrease of what LIPA will be paying in taxes. Does it ever level off?
It does after, again, the deal was structured that the first 7 years, you see this glide path here. There is an additional 5 years where, the number levels off, but then there's the possibility, again, and it gets into how many of the stacks stay open. Do they close down one of the, each stack is is part of a generation plant, and if they close one down, so there's different scenarios in the settlement that would, that could potentially impact us. But there is, we do level off after year 7. So yes.
This parent is suggesting that the notion of closing Dickinson and or Belrose is perplexing because both of those schools are more centrally located in our district. So can you speak to whether the geographic position of the buildings had anything to do with their selection for potential closure?
Again, if you look at the factors, there may have been a piece of that, but really it was, what are the costs of running those buildings? What are the future costs in terms of capital? What are the staffing implications for those buildings? So, there is an aspect of location, but I think the larger pieces of this were the capacity of the building and the work that needs to be done in those buildings.
A number of people are asking when the scenario that is chosen will be implemented. Will it be next school year or somewhere thereafter?
Yeah. So again, if you let me just go back here. So again, you can see the timeline here over the next few months. We would be looking to implement this scenario into the budget for the 21-22 school year.
This question reads, what will the potential class sizes look like now with fewer teachers?
Again, all of the scenarios keep our class sizes within these guidelines right here. So if you look at the yellow, all of the scenarios keep our class sizes, within those administrative guidelines. The yellow column on the right.
Thanks. Is there a breakdown that looks at the scenarios of staff loss within each scenario that was listed? Let me rephrase that. If you look at each individual scenario, can we determine at this time the numbers of teachers that will be needed at each building?
There is, in there is discussion of the FTE, which is the full-time equivalent, which is a term used to talk about staffing. So yes. I do also want to say that this only represents core teachers, administrators, clerical, all of those positions. It's not just teachers, but but it's important to point out that some of the other areas, your counselors, some of your specials are really, they're not factored into this. So when you look at the savings, if you will, of these scenarios, it doesn't include those positions. And again, part of that is built in to provide the flexibility, should we want to implement some other types of programs. So again, it's just important to point that out. And if you read through the scenarios, you'll see in more detail.
There are a number of comments or questions that go along the lines of why can't we do this scenario? That's not a scenario that was listed in the plan. Is there any way that community members can present their thoughts and have those be considered by the Board of Ed?
Well, and again, that's why we're here. That I wanted to give you an opportunity to just have a better understanding of the study and what went into it and the data that's in there. But also, if you have suggestions, if you have ideas, if you have concerns, if you have questions, that's why we're doing this, and the board wants to hear.
Children living in Eaton's Neck would be on the bus for an extremely long period of time if they had to go to East Northport Middle School. Was that something that was considered by?
Yep, in the study, and forgive me, I'm going to try to find the page, but there is a a breakdown of the distance from the furthest, school. So I know that, the last year, the distance, the furthest distance from Northport Middle School to the furthest student, presumably living on Eaton's Neck, was it was 7.99 miles, I believe. Now the distance to East Northport Middle School from that same location is only another 1.8 miles. And I don't want to say only, but it is only 1.8 miles. Now the distance between Northport Middle School and East Northport Middle School is 3 miles. But you have to remember that if you were going directly to East Northport Middle School from wherever, directly to any school, you're going to take a shorter path. So the net increase from the furthest point, wherever that student lived last year, which was, if I said 7.9, I'm going to see if I can find it, but yeah, here it is. Let's see. Just excuse me. But you'll find distances on page 58 and 59. And yeah, I'm sorry, it was 7.15 miles. The distance of the home of the current student who lives the furthest away. But the difference, if they went to East Northport Middle School, it'd only be another 1.83 miles. Because again, you wouldn't go to Northport Middle and then go to East Northport. You would find a faster and more efficient route.
Can you speak to the building usage now? This community member is suggesting that the report was from last year, prior to the buildings being at max, and they seem to be at max now with the lower class size and the addition of the 14 sections.
Yeah, and that's true. Again, we find ourselves in a COVID world. This is a temporary situation, hopefully, and we're planning that way with the understanding that life, if it hasn't taught us anything recently, that there's uncertainty. So we did repurpose some of our spaces, and but we wouldn't, if we find ourselves in a situation that next year we're post-COVID, this is over, we wouldn't continue with the class sizes that we have right now.
Mr. Banzo, the students whose parents have opted to keep them home and they are still enrolled in school, but they are fully remote students, were they removed from these numbers, or are they included in the demographic numbers?
Nope, they're included. They're included.
So if they came back to school, that wouldn't have any impact on these numbers?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Can you please more specifically address the impact to the schools, students, teachers, and the community if we do not redistrict and instead keep things status quo?
Yeah, I mean, if we keep things status quo, we really have some very, very difficult, financial hardships that we're going to have to overcome. And, if the community would want everything as it is, there would be quite a bit of burden on the community to do that, quite honestly, from a tax perspective, because not only would we, require, as we put our budget together, what that would have to look like, but the community is also going to be, impacted with a tax shift from LIPA, because whatever LIPA doesn't pay, everybody else has to pay. So, you're talking on an average household, you're talking, let me just see something here. There was a slide, and I don't have it with me right now, but there was a slide that in the LIPA presentation that show the individual impact of a house assessed at $3,800, which is roughly, a house that costs around $500,000. But and it shows the impact of the LIPA shift plus the impact of school taxes at 2% plus town taxes at 1%. So that money starts to add up, and that's not even that's the, there's a cumulative effect to that. And again, we have an obligation to balance our program, do what we want for our students within our vision, within our values, and also be fiscally responsible to our community. So that, it would be increasingly difficult to run the program that we have, because something has to give. Because if the community comes back and says, hey, listen, we want all of our schools, but we don't want to pay more taxes, something has to give. There has to be less of something. And then if you start to, get into programs, what does that look like? And I don't want to even start getting into naming programs, but something, something has to give. And the amount of money is significant, and it's going to grow. I mean, if you look at this chart, this is the shift, and basically each year you can take the prior year's bar and put it on top of the next year's bar, and then the next year's bar, and then the next year's bar, and now you have an understanding of the cumulative effect of all this. So it is, we do have to do our due diligence. Again, provide the program that we want for our students, even consider some enhancements, but also be fiscally responsible.
The next question is, why does this need to happen so quickly? This community member was under the impression that it was going to be a phased in or a phased rollout.
Yeah, again, like I said, there's a number of factors, that go into this. And again, that's what I've been talking about in terms of LIPA, in terms of costs. The settlement is here. And the shift of taxes is here. So, it is something that we want to, address as quickly as possible.
The next question is, leads with a statement that kindergarten rooms are generally larger classrooms. How would we be able to add more sections of kindergarten to other buildings if they don't have additional kindergarten classrooms?
Again, we'd have to look at that, and there may be some rooms, that aren't, quote unquote traditional kindergarten rooms. We'd have to dive into that a little bit, a little bit deeper. But again, you're right, they are in some areas, they are a little bit bigger. Not necessarily every building has larger kindergarten classrooms, but some do. And again, that's something that we would have to consider. Certainly, it would be something where we'd want to try to keep all the kindergarten sections near each other.
Thank you. If this plan moves forward and a selection is made and a plan is in place, when will parents know which school their children will be attending? How quickly will that process happen?
Sure. So once we start to really work on a scenario and work through it, we'd be working on this, from the minute that the decision is made, and then we would, start the process of redrawing lines and communicate as early as we can, early fall, to our families. That type of information, as soon as we can, we would get it out to our families.
There are a number of, there are questions, they have question marks at the end of them, but they're really suggestions as to alternative ways that the district can save money. One says, can we save money by having administration work remotely from home or spread out throughout the district? So suggestions like these, if parents wanted to get these suggestions to the board, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. So if they could submit them to the future study email address, which let me see here, is that right here? It is futurestudy@northport.k12.ny.us. It is in the communication that was sent out earlier, announcing this, and I don't see it here, but I will add it. is. Ms. McLaughlin, are there other questions?
There are a number. This question is, can you reiterate the possibility of rezoning the entire district? Tonight, this community member says she thought that you said that it's a possibility in terms of students being impacted, even if their own building didn't close. She was under the impression that a previous meeting, a council call, that you didn't think that would be the case. So I think that it needs a little bit of clarity around, this is, she's calling it a rezoning of the entire district.
Well, not necessarily the entire district. It really comes down to what scenario is selected and what that would mean. But again, if we talk about, let's just talk about elementary schools. You know, if elementary school X is closed, you know, those students have to, you know, we have to welcome them into other buildings, and it may not all be the same building. And we would have to look at how we could configure the other buildings to keep the enrollment balanced to the extent possible throughout the district.
This question is about the Brosnan building. Previously, where was the administration housed when all schools were in operation and had many more students? The question is, why do we need an entire building for administration? You speak to what's at the Laurel Avenue building.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So in addition to administration, we also have, we rent space to Island Kids, and that is a revenue generator for us. You know, in addition, we have our alternative high school program here. And this building, you know, prior to COVID was used extensively. It also houses our community services, but is also used extensively by our community, as are all of our buildings. And, you know, somebody asked, well, why would you keep it? And again, it's certainly something that could be considered, but, you know, for the same reasons that we're talking about, hey, you know, a contingency plan, if we ever had a scenario where enrollment went back up, you know, now you have a building that, again, you know, this building would need work, but you could convert it back into a school building. You know, over the past decade, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen the growth. We haven't seen enrollment go back up. So, you know, and that's part of why we're here today.
I think this question is asking, I think this individual is asking for questions to be read fully and literally. And what I have been asked to do is to present the questions that are common themes. There are 73 more questions, and it's already 8:30. So I'm grouping them into common themes. And effectively, you know, some of the rhetoric that is personal opinion, I've presented to Mr. Banzer and asked him how would community members and parents present their personal opinion to the Board of Education for consideration. And I think he did answer that question. So I'll go on to the next. Mr. Banzer, can you talk about the results of testing that had been done on, I believe it says this building, I would imagine it means Northport Middle School, and how it can be accessed?
Sure, it's all on the website. If you go to you know, the main page, you can find all the information about the PW Grosser report there.
This question is, how many empty classrooms did we have last year at each elementary school? And I know that information is in the study. Would you be able to direct this community member to that?
Yeah, sure. So if you, you know, empty classrooms, you know, what I can say about, you know, building administrators, because I was one, and teachers, they, you know, they don't leave empty classrooms. They find a use for it, and rightfully so. But I think what you'll see here is, you know, the pupil capacity percentage that was used last year. So it ranged from, using the elementary, 82.7% at Pulaski to 55.5% at Norwood. And, you know, the thing I would say about Norwood is, you know, that doesn't obviously account the fact that we had, you know, the sixth grade there for a while as well, and then the kindergartners, you know, prior to that. But so again, that gives you, but there is, in the pupil capacity study, there is extensive information classroom by classroom that you can, you know, that you can access.
Mr. Banzer, there's a question about special education specific to Dickinson Avenue School. Dickinson has many of their student learners are classified students, and to move them from their environment may set them back. Has this been considered when looking at the option of closing Dickinson?
Yeah, so again, the social emotional, you know, piece of this, we certainly understand that. And, you know, for all of our students, in particular our students with disabilities, you know, we would work very closely with the families, you know, the building administration, the special education administration, you know, to make the transition as smoothly as possible for our students and our families.
Okay, thank you. A question continues. I'm not sure I understand it. It talks a little bit about historically the structure of the district. Elementary schools were K through 6. East Northport Middle was 7 through 9. I would say Northport Middle or Middleville at the time was 7 through 9, and the high school was 10 through 12. Then it changed a little bit, and the high school went 9 through 12. Has the district considered going back to the old model? Which I understand all of that, but the bottom question is, our elementary class sizes are small. If we simply increase the size of our classes in each elementary school, would it resolve the issue at hand? I think I understand. Increase class size, and I'm sorry to the person who said this a number of different ways. Increasing class size rather than closing a building, I would say it would be fewer sections, therefore fewer staff required to teach the same number of children, but keeping the buildings open, all 6 elementary schools open. I think that's what's being juxtaposed here.
Yeah, again, you really have to weigh the costs, you know, the cost of doing that, right? Because there is a financial cost, you know, to doing that, to maintaining a building, you know, to heating the building. You know, does it need a new roof? You know, what are the capital projects that are, you know, that are being considered? And, you know, all those pieces, again, you'll find all that information, you know, in the scenarios.
Question, was the layout and the outdoor learning space available at Belrose Avenue School taken into consideration?
Because of the, you know, the background there, I think that this study was pretty specific, and it likely did not. And certainly we're aware that there is that opportunity, you know, for our students.
Question, does enrollment not fluctuate? I think the answer to that is yes, it does. Could you reiterate what happens if enrollment goes up significantly and we've closed 2 buildings?
Sure. So, you know, let's talk about the word significantly for a second. You know, if you close a building, you repurpose it for, let's say that we wouldn't necessarily close everything and just get rid of everything, because again, you want to mitigate against exactly what you're talking about, so that if that happened and you had significant growth back, then you would have the means to accommodate you know, to accommodate that growth. And that would be much cheaper than, say, you know, having to find property and build a new building. So again, you know, somebody asked the question before, hey, how can we still have Brosnan, right? And one of the reasons is, you know, geez, you know, you want to be very careful about, you know, giving up an asset. What I can say though is the enrollment over the last 10 years, and I know from here it only gives the last 6, but I can tell you that, you know, over the last decade, the enrollment has declined to the tune of about 1,400 students.
Question, should we continue to expect cuts on schools as the deficit is greater with each year as per the LIPA glide path?
Again, we would get to a situation where we feel like we could run our program, in a more efficient way. And then we would have to be, we would have to be creative. We'd have to be creative with our reserves. We would be certainly advocating for more state aid. All those things are, things that we do anyway. But we would have established a new baseline and have really slowed the rate of growth in our budget, that could, that would have a resounding impact for us into the future positively.
The next question, has a lot of preliminary information and opinion, very, very meaningful, but it talks about how much and what types of consideration have been given to the social, emotional well-being of our students after this year regarding a pandemic. Then the nature of the question is, are we rushing into this?
No, again, I understand this has been, an extraordinary time for everybody, for students and adults alike. And we, I'm not quite sure where we are in this, in this whole piece, and we really have to just emphasize taking things, one day at a time. We have, some programs and some very specific ideas for our students about, being resilient and maintaining routines. And again, we understand this, and we also understand, we have to weigh all those things and consider the financial impact going forward and the impact to our community as well. But again, from that aspect, we're not talking about, well, if we did this, we'd have to decimate this program or that program, or that we still couldn't have a very supportive and strong, SEL program or our counselors or things like that. So, we would be looking to maintain those things. It's just that when you're spread out so far, it gets harder and harder to be able to maintain what you have.
A number of community members have asked, are there other ways, as I mentioned earlier, are there other ways of looking at cost-saving measures? One suggestion is putting a payroll freeze for the administration in the district. Another is to review scenarios with larger class sizes. And the question is, what is the process to increase the class sizes that you mentioned earlier in the presentation?
Well, if you increase class sizes, you would need even less space. So I'm not sure if that's what they are suggesting. We have contractual limits, and again, I can show you what they are here, and these are in the report. In the blue, these are the contractual limits. They're close. They're close, but there is a difference, and sometimes a few students makes a difference. The contractual guidelines for our kindergarten, really, that's an old model based on the half-day kindergarten. But we have really worked, we have worked within the administrative guidelines. Sometimes we've gone over by a student or two and come close to the contractual guidelines, but we really try to, adhere to those administrative guidelines. And again, if you look at this below here, whoops, let me just do this. And, this indicates that we have right here, this indicates that, 105 of 109 sections were below functional class guidelines, and 83% of them, 88 of them were 10% below. So yes, you could increase class sizes. You just have to have the capacity to do so. In other words, you have to have enough sections in a building to be able to do that. Otherwise, there's nowhere to go, because then you have to add another section.
This question is with regard to transportation, and has transportation or busing students been taken into consideration? What would the cost, would there be a cost increase? What would the cost be? This is specific to Dickinson Avenue School, that if Dickinson closes, there are a significant number of walkers that will now need busing.
Right, and we would have to, again, we would have to look into that. Once we narrow things down, we would be looking more specifically at those routes and what the implications of transportation are.
The question continues to come up. Maybe we need to answer it again, Mr. Banzer. When would redistricting occur, and when would families know what school their child will be attending in September of 2021?
Yeah, so again, we would be, if we were moving forward, we picked a scenario and we said this is the direction that we would be going, we would notify our families as soon as possible. I would set a target date for early spring and continue to update the community on where we are with our ability to let you know where we are with that. The sooner the better, we would be letting people know. But there would be some work to be done prior to doing that.
Question, are the 5 scenarios that are listed the only scenarios that the board will be choosing from, or would the Board of Education and you, Mr. Banzer, take different suggestions at this point?
And excuse me, and that's why we're here. There's been a lot of work done around these scenarios, but that's why we're engaging the community. Because it can be, hey, here are the five scenarios. There could be something, we haven't thought of yet. So that's why we're doing this.
If the plan is approved, any one of the options is approved, the question is with regard to any tax increase. The community members are asking if there will be no tax increase, and will it offset the LIPA burden enough? What's the goal there?
Yeah, again, we would have to, certainly it would slow, the increase in our budget. We have salaries. There are many things that are still unknown to us. What are our insurance increases? Our pension costs. All those things are pieces that we would have to consider. We also don't know about our revenue side. We don't know what's going to happen to state aid. So we'd have to take all those things into account as we move through the budget process. Thank you.
Can you speak again to the timeline, Mr. Banzer? There are a number of questions that talk about, the timeline and when this actually began. The questions seem to be that is the district and the board rushing into this, and then particularly with regard to, the pandemic, is this the right time to make this significant decision?
Sure. So again, I just point this out. This was presented to the community last fall. So, and again, there, the whole pamphlet, is available. But this illustration was used to kind of map out where we would be going. And we know. Listen, we know that we're in very, very difficult times, and it is a challenging time. I understand that, but there are challenges all over the place. There's an opportunity for us to make some adjustments to our district and to save money. And we know that those things are really important to people. It's all important. So it's not lost on us. But there are some things that are in motion and have been in motion for a while, and now they've become more tangible. We've talked about declining enrollment in the past. We've talked about that sort of that LIPA out there, but that's no longer a concept or a theory. It's real, and the settlement is here. We know that the threat to public education funding is seems to be very, very real. We have to factor those things in. Plus, we know that overall, this has not been favorable to individuals and individuals in our community. So we have to factor, the financial piece in here, as well as, ensuring that we can run the program that we desire to run.
There are a number of statements leading to questions that ask about Northport Middle School and closing Northport Middle School, and the fact that Northport Middle School was not listed on any of the scenarios. The specific question is, what will happen to families who are asking for variances to avoid having their children attend Northport Middle School? I would assume that means if the scenario is selected where all students go to Northport Middle School.
Sure. Well, I mean, again, I want to reiterate that there's, I think, a 4,000 to 6,000 page report. And again, through that agency, through Grosser and through, through the state and through the county, that building has been given a clean bill of health. Again, we have students in there right now, and things are going very well there. So I understand the history. I certainly get it, but the Board of Education, the administration, community members invested a tremendous amount of time, effort, and money into handling every situation that has come up regarding Northport Middle School. And again, there's, like I said, the thousands of pages that are available to everybody online.
There are a number of thank yous to you, Mr. Banzer, for your dedication, commitment, and leadership. A number of thank yous. I think people are dropping off, including some of the committee members who have offered to speak to anybody who has questions. But I'll speak to you about that tomorrow so that, you can make that process what you want it to be. I guess that for a final question, if that makes sense at this point in the evening, what would happen if the board was interested in moving forward and restructuring if, in general, the community is representing that they are against it?
Yeah, again, and part, a big part of why we're doing what we're doing is to hear from the community and to get their input. And I know that's the desire of the board. They made that abundantly clear, to me, and they've said that publicly. So, are we going to find a situation where everybody is going to agree? No, that's just, that's not likely. But I think if people understand the rationale has been explained, the process has been transparent, whatever the decision is, whatever it is, then, then at the end of the day, I think we've met our obligation. Again, these are very, very difficult pieces. These are very difficult circumstances that we find ourselves in, and going through these processes is not easy, and it is very difficult to get everybody to agree to the same type of thing. But we can agree that we're going to have a thorough process, a transparent process, and a process that engages the community.
Mr. Banzer, final question talks a little bit about the decision for tomorrow night's board meeting to be held virtually rather than in person, and with the enrollment tonight in this meeting of well over 200 people, was that something that was considered, with regard to availability for people to be heard?
Yes. So it was really important that, again, with the Governor Cuomo's executive order, we can only have 50 people, in a setting at a time. And, we have a number of people that would be attending the board meeting to receive awards and to give presentations about other things that are on the agenda. And so we certainly didn't want to get into a situation where there were people who may want to address the board about this particular issue, and some are in the building and some are not in the building. And by having a Zoom meeting, by having it virtual, we put everybody on equal footing, and we also allow, full participation by everyone. Again, it's just another set of circumstances we find ourselves in, you know, as we deal with this pandemic.
Yeah. And then Mr. Banzer, for people who are feeling as though their questions have not been answered tonight, or are concerned that their statements have not been read and yet the questions have been posed, is there a way that without being face-to-face with the board, they can get their thoughts and their feelings and their statements to the board?
Yep, they can certainly, as I said, I'll go to that that email page, and you can also email the board directly. You can, you know, the future study at northport.k12.ny.us. If you do decide to email the board directly, I would just ask that you include this this email address as well. It just allows us to compile all the questions, the concerns, and any thoughts brought forward, rather than grabbing them from different email addresses.
Okay. So then it's safe to say that, you know, all these questions will be reviewed, Mr. Banzer, and information will be shared with the community. I don't know if that will happen before tomorrow night's board meeting, but in the near future.
Yep. So again, we're monitoring this email address as well, and you know, we've started to address and put together some frequently asked questions. Those will go up on the website tomorrow. And certainly, again, you know, we encourage you, we ask you to be a part of the board meeting and to bring your concerns forward to the board.
Great. Thank you.
Again, I just want to close by saying thank you. Thank you for being here. You know, a part of this, when we did the board workshop a few weeks ago, we had about 80 something people. So we've tripled that. And I think that's really important. You know, it's important. We want the engagement of the community, as I've said many times tonight. And so I do really appreciate you taking the time, you know, to be involved, to take the time to listen, take the time to, you know, to provide your input. Have a good evening and take care.